Fortnite's meta has completely changed in the new Season 4. There's 3 new incredibly powerful drop spots, an overpowered mythic that no one's really talking about, and there's a tricky loot pool of shotguns that are unexpectedly stronger than people think. But which of these 3 new drop spots is the most overpowered? Sanguine Suites to the northeast has 92 chests, almost double Relentless Retreat's 48, and Eclipse to stage 31. Sanguine also has the most floor spawns and an insane 78 ammo crates in comparison to 16 and 39 in Eclipse and Relentless. So if you've ever landed at Eclipse and wonder why your ammo's so bad, this is why. When looking at all of the POIs, 76 ammo crates in Sanguine Suites is only beaten by Megacity's 87. To add to this, the northeast of the map has 4 launch pads that can all be used one after another to rotate from the northeast of the map to the northwest in a matter of minutes. It's clear that Sanguine Suites is clearly the best drop spot, the loot here is unmatched, but Eclipse and Relentless have their strengths too. The Eclipse Estate Vault has 3 mythic podiums, whereas the other 2 POIs only have 2. Sanguine has these launch pads, but Eclipse Estates and Relentless Retreat have rifts that will take you roughly 600 meters in any direction. A huge amount of loot in Sanguine is also a problem since it attracts the most players here, and there's often much more contested than the other 2 POIs. In the first tournament of the season, it had 3 teams landing here in comparison to 1 in Eclipse and Relentless. Sanguine Suites may also struggle like its predecessor, Lonely Labs, as it's stuck in the corner of the map with far rotations. Players from Slappy Shores, Brutal Bastion, or whatever this area is called, can easily sit up in positions to hold the players leaving here, blocking every exit. The launch pad in this temple or in Brutal Bastion can easily be used against them to fly directly into the POI, allowing them to loot up and then third party the fights here. Worst of all, on west to east bus paths, players can also land on the 3 chests to the mountain here, and if they get an AR, they can almost guarantee an elim on players flying out of the sky. If uncontested, this drop spot is insane. However, I highly doubt that'll happen, as at the FNCS Global Championships, I've already seen 3 teams trying to claim to land here. NA's Bugan Threats, Peterbot and Bila, and Brazil's Gibzera and Nutty. But did you know you can get into all 3 of the new vaults in under 60 seconds? At Eclipse Estate, you can land on the floor spawns to the east, harvest this tree for around 70 wood, and instantly run inside this door. There's a camera that will show your location to everyone close by, so Rabbit here destroys it before it spots him. Since he has a business turret, he drops this at the top of the staircase, as this will alert him to any enemies attempting to sneak behind him. After looting the staircase, he places a cone to stand on, which gives him a safe right-hand peek to fight the mythic boss, Thorn. In this case, the RNG gods have blessed him with C4, which with a single use he can use to destroy each of these turrets. You can also just put these turrets into cone prison and they'll eventually stop shooting you. You've already gained access to the vault and throw another business turret outside the entrance to again alert them if anyone is sneaking behind them, but also this just helps wipe out the low card NPCs that spawn after they've stolen a mythic from the vault. The vault at Relentless Retreat is relatively similar. Most players land to the center of the POI here, pick up a weapon, in this case trying to beam a player at the sky who is flying overhead, knock out any annoying NPCs, run through this door and loot this area before running down the stairs, continuing to loot the stairs there, shooting out the cameras, and then peeking through this ledge to hit the boss, as you'll stay hidden for a longer period of time. Now these will work if you're contested or uncontested, but Sanguine Suites is most likely to be contested with a bunch of players, so how does this one work? Well, what makes this extra difficult is the vault has many ways to access it. So the team we're looking at lands to the west, low side, grabs the chest and floor spawns and runs through this door. They drop down this zip line, it's only 2 tiles so they don't actually activate it, as this will alert everyone to where they actually are, and then pop some minis and hit the 2 barrels to give themselves some shield. They sneak through this vent and destroy the cameras, laying a business turret again where the NPC spawn, similar to some of our other vaults. Now they're at the vault spawn, but they don't have the card, as the boss is in the next room. Choosing the path that they've taken here means that even if another team manages to get to the boss first, they're still in control of the vault and can fight for the key. As they enter the room, they block the other path that the contesting teams would come down and wipe out the boss. When running back to loot the vault, they're careful enough to pay attention to the weakened walls that can be rocket busted through with the rocket ram, as this is another way that players could sneak up behind them. But of course, once you get into the vault, you can only take 1 mythic item here. So which should you take, and why is it TNTina's Kaboombo? Well, there's 8 possible mythics split into 7 possible spawn locations, and there are no duplicates. So if the Foundation's MK7 is at Sanguine Suites, then it can't also be at Relentless Retreat. This is another reason why Eclipse Estate's vault is so powerful. As I already mentioned, it has 3 spawns, whereas the other vaults have 2. This means you have a higher chance of getting a specific mythic item if you land here. This is actually made even more possible in tournaments, as Kit's Shockwave Launcher isn't in comp, meaning there's only 7 possible mythic spawns, all distributed evenly across the POIs. The first one you can choose is Midas's Drum Gun, which in its prime dealt 250 damage per second with a 2 times headshot multiplier. This season it's been nerfed to 204 damage per second, and the headshot multiplier is back down to 1.5 like majority of other items. Combine this with the fact that at range it isn't that great. It's still a good weapon for jumping into players' boxes, but it's certainly not my first pick. The other close range weapon is Gunner's Stinger SMG, which has an insane 264 damage per second. Interestingly enough, this is pretty much the exact same stats as the Gold Combat SMG, however it feels like it has slightly worse initial recoil and it doesn't have first shot accuracy, so it's a bit worse at range. It's a good pick, but it's far from the best. Hands down, the best spray weapon in the game is the Foundation's MK7 Assault Rifle. This boasts an insane 230 damage per second, which is close to that of the Gunner's Mythic SMG, and is 30 damage per second higher than the best AR, the Gold Twin Mag. The accuracy on this weapon is truly insane. It's overpowered in my hands, so when a pro picks it up, I'm sure they're almost guaranteed elims. The only downside is that it does tear through medium ammo, so if you have this, your duo will most likely need to run an SMG to split the ammo efficiently between you two. On the opposite side of the spectrum, the worst mythic by a landslide is Zig and Choppy's ray gun. I have nothing good to say about this gun. Maybe it has infinite ammo, so that's a plus. It has a charge up time, and I'm pretty sure it just tickles anyone you aim it at. Its shockwave launcher is great, but again, it's not in tournaments, and with the rocket ram in the game and the general lack of rocket ammo, it's kind of hard to justify picking it up over any of the other mythics, outside of Zig and Choppy's ray gun. My personal favorite is its counterpart, the Kit's charged shotgun. This is the best shotgun in the game by far, maybe beaten out by the Heister Breacher, but the ability to do 204 damage without any reality augments is insanely strong. Even without charging it up, it can do 182 damage to the head, and with charging it deals 204. The 1.75 times headshot multiplier hits hard. If you manage to get chunked by it and are weak, Ocean's Bottomless Chug Jug can heal you right back up to 100 shields and HP. The problem is, it takes 15 seconds and has a 1-minute cooldown. In ranked or pubs, maybe this is fine, but there's minimal circumstances where a player can spend 15 seconds to heal without getting pressured by another team having to cancel that heal. It's also close to unusable in an endgame, and holding slurps and mini shields is just infinitely better. I do foresee some players using it to trade Storm Surge damage or infinitely heal in the 1-tick Storm Circles, but we'll just have to wait and see. Of course, the most underrated mythic to date is TNTina's Kaboombo. This has infinite ammo with a max capacity of 5 shots. After firing each shot, it has a 25-second cooldown before that shot will recharge. The splash damage here is 75, but if you hit directly, it'll do 100 damage, and if you hit directly in the head, it'll do 125. This is insanely good for tagging players rotating, as you don't even need to directly hit them in order to rack up the 75 damage. You can just hit players who are safely peeking out of a box with the splash damage alone. Of course, these 3 POIs have 3 more mythics, but 2 of the 3 of them are kinda poo. Sanguine Sweets' boss, Diamond, drops Diamond's thermal DMR, which no one is taking because it's a DMR. Relentless Retreat's boss, Heart, drops Heart's Havoc Suppressed Rifle, try saying that 3 times, which no one is taking because it's a Havoc Suppressed AR. And finally, there's Eclipsed Estate. Thorn here drops Thorn's Scoped Burst SMG. Now this shoots 4 shots a burst, each dealing 16 damage, so 64 total. Most players aren't really picking it up due to its poor hipfire accuracy and box fighting skills, but in the right situations, if you aim down sight and aim at the player's ghoulies, the recoil will drag the aim up and you'll hit much more consistent damage. The combat SMG is better in the majority of situations, but this mythic burst is actually still very strong. Outside of the mythics, there are some really important things that you must know about these 3 new drop spots. On the entire map, there are only 80 heist bag spawns, and these are so important as they have a 57% chance of spawning the rocket ram, the insanely broken mobility item this season. The thing is, 70 of these 80 reside inside these 3 POIs. So not only do you have the chance of the strong mythic items, the teams landing here are guaranteed to both have rocket rams. On the flip side, if you need a rocket ram and you don't have one, you can use this to your advantage by rotating into the storm using medkits to find one that may have been left behind. These drop spots do have a massive downside that nerfs them greatly that I haven't mentioned yet. Nearly all of the materials you can harvest around this area are extremely slow harvesting, and add on top of that the high likelihood of teams contesting off spawn here, and there's a good chance the teams leaving here will not have a lot of materials. In the vicinity, there are some good bricks to most of these POIs that you can farm, but with minimal metal, a lot of these teams will be forced to go for their combat caches for the metal. Combat caches are also interesting this season because they are the most consistent way to get sharp-toothed shotguns, but unfortunately the ARs that spawn from here are kinda cheeks, as you often get DMRs as a drop. Sure, the combat caches are strong, but the new forecast towers are incredibly broken, and there's some really interesting strategies for each one. There's 6 6 potential spawns, but only 3 of them will spawn in every single game. The NPCs that are required to activate these only spawn 30 seconds into the second zone. However, the actual towers load in at the start of the game and could be spotted from the bus or while gliding. The NPCs give 2 slurps per player and 1 gold twin mag AR, but once the towers have been activated, every member of your team is able to see every storm circle, and there are points in tournaments for also capturing this tower. In the Duo Cash Cup, it's not too many, just 3 when a win is worth 65, but all of these points add up, and let's be real, the real reason you're going there is to get forecast to see every single zone. The spawn to the south of Bastion is on top of this hill, meaning sightlines to the south are completely cut off. There's a ton of brick up here, which means if you get here first, you can build a brick tower and wait for the NPCs to spawn. The problem is, if you spend too long fighting them, another team can push in and actually draw their attention away and steal the cards from you, so it may be best to build 2 split bases here to give 2 different angles. The spawn to the north of the ice lake suffers from this massively, as it's in such a wide open area, it's easy for teams to third party from any of the hills around, including the hill to the north of Bastion from a long distance away. Teams trying to grab this card will need to ensure that they stay in control of the elevated areas here if they don't want to get snuck up on. The spawn to the east of the racetrack is another great example of this. The sanctuary all the way to the southeast has complete sightlines straight down onto this area, and a bush that has sightlines onto it as well. So players attempting to grab this have to be very cognizant of the shots coming from this direction. To prevent players from contesting it, on the west tower at the racetrack, Khan lays 3C4 underneath the console where players wouldn't be able to see it. They're extra careful of these 2 bushes, one to the south and one to the west, as players could be camping in here, but no one actually ends up contesting them for this, and they activate the tower for free. Unfortunately, they do get pushed and get wiped out immediately after this though. The spawn to the southeast of Eclipsed is relatively simple. There's one large hill, everything spawns below it, keep control of that. But where things get really interesting is the north of Frenzy Field spawn. There's so many trees in this area that teams here typically chop out a lot of these for extra visibility. This small house has a lot of cover, so you can usually build on top of it and around it to give yourself the most vision. Somehow this hasn't been done on any of the other examples I've shown so far, but build around the actual capture point so that even if you don't manage to get the card, you have first access to this. Now of course the teams from Frenzy Farm are highly likely to push here, so it's really key that they end up focusing and pressuring these teams to try and weaken them and keep them away from yourselves. You can see our team here continues to push towards them, as this is where the bot eventually spawns, giving themselves both access to double spray and easily pick up the card here. But again, it's still a forecast tower, so you have to be aware no matter how good your positioning is and how good you hold an area, lots of teams will push you for this, as it's just so powerful. And of course, there are things you can do this season to make your fight significantly easier. Of course, the first is just to use the first shotgun reality augment. Too much detail as to why to use it, it's pretty much just the best reality augment this season. In terms of which shotgun you're going to choose, most people, let's be real, are going to choose the Sharptooth shotgun because it is the best shotgun, outside of maybe the charge shotgun or the breacher. The Infiltrator, most people on day 1 felt like was more like a pump shotgun since it has that in the name. However, it has to be used more like a tactical shotgun. It has very close fire rate to that, it's 1.2. But the biggest problem I have with it is that it has this fast fire rate, but it's not an automatic weapon, and it has very low structure damage. As you can see, when that player edited the cone, I couldn't just replace it with the shotgun, is how weak it was. But it can do a ton of damage, just not in my hands. As you can see, I get absolutely 2-shot cooked by this guy. If you got cooked and managed to survive and have the Fast Fisher reality augment, this is actually one of the best that Fortnite have ever put in. Instead of fishing spots, you just swim through them and it'll automatically fish them. Now, if you're scuffed and you don't have much loot off spawn, you can get weapons from this and you can get heals, but I think the biggest application for this is actually in mid-game, just walking past fishing spots that haven't been harvested. You can get more whites through floppers, or you can get more shields through shieldfish, which is incredibly important for continually rehealing yourself as you rotate. In terms of ARs, just take the twin mag. There's absolutely no reason to do anything else. You can reload both clips at the same time, so make sure it's always reloaded so you have the fastest ability to spray, but you can also combine this with first assault and scoped salvo to have an incredibly powerful surge weapon. You can see my first shot here did 46 damage, and I was easily able to wipe him out of the sky. Of course, flying like this is something you really want to avoid, and as you realized, I've not covered the rocket ram much in this video, but that's because I've actually already covered a full video on this, which you can watch by clicking right here.